Welcome back to Hudson Appliance for another episode of Wicked Good Food. I'm your host, Matt Williams, and today we're going to have a snow day. I was talking to some of my students the other day because my full-time job is as a high school teacher, and we were talking about a snow day and how we haven't had much snow this year, but it's certainly coming. And we started talking about what are some of the things that we like to eat on a snow day. Number one was a drink, and that's hot chocolate. So we're going to actually make some hot chocolate, some powdered hot chocolate mix that you can make at home, and you can adjust it and make it however you want it. Keep it on the shelf, and it's an awful lot cheaper than buying the stuff in the little packets or the big tubs. One of the other things that kids said were Hot Pockets. So now we're not going to make those because I'm sure those are probably trademarked, but we're going to make something very similar. We're going to make a broccoli and cheese little stuffed pizza dough essentially. And then we're going to do another one that's going to be steak and cheese. That one's actually going to have a pretzel crust on it. And I'll show you how to do that, and it's super easy. And it might even inspire you to make some real simple pretzels at home. And then the third thing we're going to make, or the fourth thing we're going to make, is some popcorn. But we're going to do it a little different. This popcorn's going to have a little bit of a healthy twist, even if you want to go that way. But we're going to cook it right in a big pot with some extra virgin olive oil. And we're going to add some Parmesan cheese and some fresh rosemary and fresh cracked black pepper. So it should be a good time. We're going to start out with our broccoli. I have some water here about to simmer. So this broccoli is going to go in our broccoli and cheese. So for this particular dish, I don't want too much of the stem. So I'm just going to cut these little florets off like so. And some of the big ones I'm just going to cut in half. That looks about good. And I can always cut these up a little more. I don't want to cook these too much because they are going to bake in the oven. I still want them to have a little bit of texture to them, but I do want to put them in there for a minute or two and just get some of that real bright color. I haven't salted my water. I do want to salt my water. I'll go ahead and throw these right in my water. Beautiful. Then I'm just going to give them a very quick stir. But one of the things that's cool is you'll see how quickly they turn really bright green. So we're going to let those sit and cook. Next thing we're going to start working on is going to be for our other pockets, which are going to be steak and cheese. We're going to put some onion and pepper in those. So I'm going to cut off one end of the onion. I'm going to leave the root end on though. And that's going to help hold our onion together. I'm not going to need all that. We'll use that for another show. Go ahead and peel it. Then it depends what you want. You can cut them really small, you can cut them really big. I'm going to go and dice them relatively big. But same thing, I'm going to make a bunch of cuts through, not cutting through the end, and make some perpendicular cuts to that. Beautiful. So a little dice of onion, pepper. Cut the top off, cut the bottom off. And this is the only unusable part out of the top and the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and use this. Cut this up about the same size as our onions. And we're not going to make a whole bunch of these, so we're not going to need a ton of peppers. All we'll need probably is the amount that's here. But I will show you, in case you haven't seen it before, I love to cut a pepper just like that. All right, our broccoli's done, so I'm going to take this, turn our heat all the way off. We'll put it over here and I'll drain it in just a minute so it doesn't overcook. But now we've got the top and the bottom off of our pepper. I'm going to use the tip of my knife and cut a little slit in there and just take my knife and follow the pepper around, bend it over like so. When I get here, I don't want to cut towards my finger, so I'll grab it on the other side. But you should be able to remove all the seeds and all the pith all at once and have this beautiful piece of pepper left. We're not going to need that for right now, but I thought I would show you. Now the last thing we're going to get started on is our beef. So what I have here is a really inexpensive cut of beef. This is a hunk of top round that I got at the supermarket, and I trimmed a little bit of the fat off of it, and I trimmed it so it's a little more manageable piece. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and cut it to a couple slices, about 3/4 of an inch thick. And then I'm going to look which way the meat is going, and I'm going to go across that, but I'm just going to slice it as thin as I can. Like I said, it's not a very expensive cut of meat, so it's not going to be super tender. All by itself, this isn't something you'd want to throw on a grill and grill medium rare. But by slicing it real thin like this, you're going to actually break down a lot of the fibers that make it not tender. And we'll do a little more, because why not? Then I want to go ahead and I'm going to pre-cook all this meat. So I'm going to saute it. We'll turn on our pan. We'll get it nice and hot. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to this, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. That just needs to warm up for another 30 seconds or so. That's one of the great things about this induction cooktop that I get to use here, is that it heats up so quickly. It boils water very quickly. It's just a great tool to have in the kitchen. I don't know if you're looking at that, but all of a sudden the oil just got very liquid and just ran and coated the whole bottom of the pan. I can already feel the heat. We should hear a little bit of a sizzle when I drop this in. There we go. So I'm going to season this with a little bit of salt. I'm going to shake it around a bit. You want to do this on a relatively high heat so you can get a little bit of color onto your meat. We'll let that sit. We're going to put in our onions and our peppers. We're going to take a break for a minute. I'm going to keep cooking this. I'm going to clean up my hands and clean up my cutting board from the raw beef. And we'll come back and we'll move on to the next step. All right, so I finished cooking the beef and the peppers and onions. It didn't take too much longer, just a minute or two. I just want to brown it a little bit and get it fully cooked. Now I want to go ahead and stick this in the refrigerator and let it cool down. You don't want to put stuff in the refrigerator that's steaming hot, because all that steam is going to go in, but that had a chance to cool off for a couple minutes. So I'll put it in there, let it cool off. I ran our broccoli under some cold water just to stop the cooking so that it didn't overcook. So I'm going to start to make our pockets. First thing I need is a little bit of flour. So I'm just going to pour some flour on my board here. And once again, I'm back with my store-bought pizza dough here. Big fan of store-bought pizza dough. I'm going to cut this in half. For each of these, about 1/4 pound is perfect. So it comes sold in a pound, so it'll make 4 per portion. So I'm going to cut this just like this. Get it reasonably well floured. And I'm not going to go crazy. I don't need to take out my rolling pin. I'm just going to use the palm of my hand and spread it out. And it really doesn't matter what shape you make this. It really doesn't. But you do want to get it relatively thin. When you're all done, if it looks like a perfect little rectangle like you came out of a frozen box, great. If it looks like some sort of shape that hasn't been invented yet, who cares? It's still going to taste just as good. So that's all I'm looking for. I want to stretch it out. Get it relatively thin. There are going to be some spots where when we fold this together, it's going to overlap. So I just want to make sure I don't have one area that's much too doughy. All right, so there's one of them, all ready to go. We'll do our other. It's sticking a little bit, so I'm just going to throw it in our flour for a moment. Oops, that side too. So our broccoli and cheese one's going to be very simple. It literally is going to be broccoli, and we're going to use some Velveeta cheese or some processed cheese like that because it melts so well. That's one of the wonderful things about those processed cheeses. I'm not a huge fan of them for a lot of applications, but something where you want something that's going to melt and it's going to hold together well, it's perfect. All right, that's all we're looking for. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the heat under this pot here, because the steak and cheese one we're going to make into pretzels, but we'll get back to that. So I'm going to take a couple pieces of our broccoli here, give it a quick little cut so we're a little bit smaller. Put a couple of these on here. Maybe one more. Like so. And I'm going to take some of this cheese here. And I'm going to put a little bit of flour on my knife, which is going to help it not to stick to my knife quite as much as I cut it. Then you can reflour as needed. And that's more than I need. So, and I'm just going to sprinkle some of these around this little piece of dough. Obviously, if you like more cheese, add more cheese. If you don't like as much, or you like a different kind of cheese, by all means, use a different one. So now comes the part where we actually form it. So what I'm going to do, I have the rough shape here, but I want to take and stretch my dough out a little bit. And I'm going to pull it over the top, like so. Let me actually move this way so you can see a little better. Then I'm going to take the other end, the other edge, and do the same thing. So I create a seam right in the middle. Now my ends are still open, but now I'm going to pinch together wherever it needs to be held together a little bit, and just fold this end over and kind of pinch that all together. Now this end doesn't have as much filling. I could take and stuff a little bit of stuff in there, but I definitely don't want that much bread dough. So I'm going to cut a little off, just like that, and do the same thing. And the whole idea here is that when you flip it over, it'll sit on its seam, and it'll bake just like that. So there's one. Now we're going to make our steak and cheese one. Move this out of the way. Now our steak has had a chance to cool down a little bit. So I'll grab that out of the fridge. Now for this, I'm just going to use American cheese. I like American cheese in my steak and cheese grinders, so that's what I'm going to use in here. And I'm just going to tear it up and use as much as you like. So now I'm going to take a little pile of this and stick it in there. Maybe a little bit more meat. All right. And we're going to follow the same procedure. So I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, bring it over the top, fold over my other side, fold the ends over. But this is where we're going to make our pretzel. How this is going to end up being like a pretzel crust on here. So it's going to be very important that I seal this really well. This one I wasn't too worried. There's a piece of broccoli that's sticking through. It's not that big of a deal. But in order to make this taste like a pretzel, we're actually going to drop this whole thing into this pot of water here. But the key, whoops, that's salt. What did I do? Here we go. Is baking soda. I'm going to pour this into this water. This is about 10 cups of water and about 2/3 of a cup of baking soda. You know how you bite into a pretzel and you can actually feel it kind of tingle on your lips a little bit? Dropping it in here for about a minute is going to do that for us. So I'm going to seal this up pretty well. And then, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and drop this right in here gently and let it sit. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to let this sit for about a minute. I'll show you how we pull it off and how we get it ready to go into the oven. All right, so we've dropped it in here. I'm going to flip it over once or twice just to make sure it's totally coated in our water. It's just simmering. We want to let it go about a minute. I have our broccoli and cheese one on the tray here. We're going to bake these at about 350 degrees. This one I took a lot of care to seal up really nicely. If it opens up, you end up getting a bunch of water in there. It's not the end of the world, but the issue that you have is that a lot of your flavor is going to wash out too. It's flavor that's on your beef or some of your cheese. All right, that's good. So I want to gently get this out. I'm going to just transfer it to the tray here. Now, one of the things I want to do real quick is I want to make a quick egg wash. I'm going to use a mixing bowl here and grab an egg, excuse me. I just want to crack one egg in here. Put it in there. Whisk it together real well. And I have a little bit of water here. Pour just a little water in there. Now you can use some cream or some milk or whatever in your egg wash, but it doesn't really matter. This is going to help it to brown a lot. So give this a quick whisk together. Okay. Now, I'm just going to use my hands. I don't have a brush handy, which is fine. Your hands are the best tool in the kitchen. And I'm going to rub each one totally with egg wash. Coat them really well. All right, now the last thing I want to do is on our pretzel one, I'm going to sprinkle some salt. And this is actually a black sea salt. It's made from Hawaii, actually, from some of the ash, from the volcanic ash, and it has a great minerally flavor. So I'm going to stick this in the oven, take a minute, wash my hands, we'll come back, and we'll go ahead and make our hot chocolate. All right, I had a chance to wash my hands. We're all ready to go here. I was thinking, we might as well make some pretzels. We have a little bit of dough left here, so I'm just going to take it and cut it into a couple strips. Then each of these we can kind of roll out a bit. And we'll make a U like this, and then we'll take and cross the two sides and just pinch down and make a little pretzel shape. It's not perfect, but it's all right. It's going to taste good. We'll drop it right in our water here. I'll do another one. And like I said, this is just pizza dough. It's not any special pretzel dough. You can totally make a pretzel dough, but it's just a yeast dough. Pinch it so it stays together a little bit there. Whoops. Drop it right in. And this one we're just going to do 2 pretzel sticks. Because why not? So same thing, you want to let it go about a minute. This is going to cook the outside a little bit. It's going to add a little moisture to the outside, but the important thing it's going to do is it's going to give that little bit of tang. Now these ones I'm not going to egg wash. One, because I don't want to get my hands dirty, but also then you can see the difference between one that's straight baked with egg wash that has none of the boiling. This one's boiled with egg wash, and then these will be boiled and then baked with no egg wash. So you can see how the egg wash makes a difference in the final color. So that's about good. I don't want you laughing at my pretzel skills. They're not the best looking ones. And these I'm going to put the same salt on. Just a little bit of this black sea salt. And I'm not using black sea salt because it's some special salt that always should go on pretzels. It's because it's what I had and it kind of looked kind of neat. So I'm going to stick it in. And we'll let that be. It's going to take 10 or 12 minutes or so, give or take a little bit. It all depends on the temperature of your oven. It depends. This is a convection oven. It's going to cook a little more quickly. Next thing we're going to do is put together our hot chocolate. Hot chocolate is super easy. I have everything already weighed out. This is 2 1/4 cups of confectioner's sugar, minus the part that's on my shirt. I've got a cup of cocoa powder. So this is where we're going to get our chocolate flavor. I've got 2 1/2 cups of powdered milk, minus the part that's over there. Now you need a little bit of salt. Salt is very important. So this is about a teaspoon of salt and a couple teaspoons of cornstarch. That's going to give it just a little body, thicken it up a little bit. And I'm simply going to use a clean whisk and go in here and just mix this together. So this is a great, simple, basic recipe that you can make up, and all we're going to do is mix it with some hot water. After we mix it with our hot water and give it a taste, you can say, wait a second, I want it a little sweeter. I want it to be a little creamier, or I want it to be saltier, whatever you might want. But we're just going to mix it until it's pretty well mixed here. Now, chocolate is a South American ingredient. Another South American ingredient that's often accompanied with chocolate is chili pepper. So here I have a little bit of cayenne pepper. This is only 1/2 of a teaspoon. If you want to throw that in there and give it a little bit of heat, Why not? I bet Arthur likes a little bit of heat in his hot chocolate. We'll find out, I guess. So we'll just mix that together. All right, we're going to take another short break. I'm going to get ready to make our popcorn. We'll make our popcorn right here, and we'll warm up some water for our hot chocolate and pull our Hot Pockets out of the oven. So our little pastries are in the oven. They're browning nicely. I'm going to check them every couple minutes to make sure that they don't brown too much. Our stuffing is already totally cooked, so I'm not super worried that the inside has to heat up all the way because we just made it fresh here. I just want to make sure our dough cooks all the way and our cheese is melt. Over here I've got a pot warming up. I'm going to turn the heat up a little more, and we're going to make some popcorn. Like I said, we're going to use extra virgin olive oil, so I'm going to put enough in here to coat the bottom of the pan. And then popcorn kernels. I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons. So it's not even enough to cover half of the pan. It's going to blow your mind, or it's going to blow the top off the pot, how much popcorn this little bit of popcorn kernels makes. So to start with, I'm just going to let it sit there and cook. Here I've got a little water warming up for when Arthur gets up here. We're going to mix it with some of our hot chocolate mix and eat some hot chocolate. So I'll move this out of the way. I'm going to leave the cover off that so you can kind of hear it, but I'm going to put the cover on when they start to pop because it's going to shoot out all over the place. Now some of the toppings are going to go on our popcorn are going to be some fresh ground black pepper. So I have some whole peppercorns here, and I don't get to use my mortar and pestle all that much, so I thought I would use it in here. I'm only going to put in about 10 of them and just use this and break them up. Now at the same time, I'm going to put in some dried rosemary. And I want to break this up and kind of release some of the oils. It's popping. Now we get our cover on there. I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit because this is pretty intense. Give it one last stir and just let it go. So our rosemary's in here. So our rosemary was pretty big pieces. And our peppercorn was whole peppercorns. But now check out how it comes out. Nice and small and nicely mixed together. So I've got my Parmesan cheese here as well. Take a quick peek in here. Good. Perfect. So we've got our Parmesan cheese. We're going to use a little bit of salt and a little bit of our 2 things we just ground up in our mortar and pestle. I'm going to come over here and take a peek. We get a little bit of browning. The dough's starting to get firm, but not quite done yet. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's popping away in here. I'm going to turn this back up a bit. All right, our water here is boiled. We'll shut that off. Just let it stay warm. One of the things I like about using the extra virgin olive oil is you need some sort of fat in there when you cook it. It's great to use popcorn oil. It's great to use clarified butter. You can't use whole butter or it'll burn. It's good to pour the butter on top. But the extra virgin olive oil just gives it a great flavor. It's a real healthy fat. And this is just a different twist on making popcorn at home. Put them back in there. You want to wait till the popping slows to every 2 or 3 seconds. And you can smell. Take a whiff too to make sure you're not burning. All right, so we're about popped here, I think. So I'm going to remove it from the heat, take a peek. Whoa, watch out, it's still going. I'm going to put the lid back on for a second. Everybody in the room's getting a kick out of that, so that's good. But we'll give it a quick shake. But that filled up almost a quarter of this pot. So that's one of the reasons you want to make sure you have a nice big pot when you go to do this. And that's perfect. So now I'm going to sprinkle in our little spice mixture. And I'm going to sprinkle in some salt. But I don't want to go too heavy on the salt, because our Parmesan cheese has a pretty good amount of salt. So let's see, I'm going to put this in a bowl. So I like to put this in a bowl before I put the cheese on it, because that way the cheese doesn't melt to the hot pot. And you can see there's very few unpopped kernels. This is nice fresh popcorn. But I'll sprinkle this right over the top. And that's good. If you want a little more, get a little more. I'll take a little taste. Yep. Yeah, it's fun. Totally different than what we're used to. But popping the corn like that is so fresh, so crunchy. The room smells great now. Let's take another peek over here. We're almost here. Why don't we take a break for a minute? We'll call Arthur. We'll get him up here. We'll clean up some of my mess, and we'll taste some of this food. Hey, Arthur.
Welcome back, Matt.
Thanks for having me again here at Hudson Appliance. So today we kind of pretended like it was a snow day.
Okay.
All right, we got snowed in. We made some homemade hot chocolate. We made actually ended up being about 2 or 3 quarts of powdered mix, and you just add a little bit to your cup like you would buying the stuff at the supermarket.
Okay.
So I just mixed it right here in this pot. So I'm going to take, and I have a little surprise for you. Got a couple marshmallows. We'll put a couple of these marshmallows right in the cup. 2 or 3?
2's fine.
Okay.
Now, I came in as you were mixing the powder, and I saw you put in cayenne pepper.
That's right. I heard from a fly on the wall told me that you like a little spice.
Sure.
So we got a little cayenne pepper. So I'm going to pour this right over the top, and you can see at home that this just looks just like the hot chocolate that you would buy at the supermarket.
But better.
But better. Well, you can be the judge of that. So we're going to let this sit for just a minute and let those marshmallows kind of dissolve.
Okay.
And while we do that, I want to show you the other thing we made up here.
These the stuffers you?
They are. So check these out. So this here, let me move this out of the way. So these are the little pretzels we made. They might look like they're burnt or crispy, but look how soft they are. Very, very soft. So this one here is filled with steak and cheese.
All right.
And don't worry, we'll break into it. This one here was broccoli and cheese. These were in the oven the exact same amount of time, but that little dip in that baking powder, baking soda bath made a big difference in the way they look. So we'll cut into one of these. The other thing we made was some popcorn. A little different though. It's got some salt and some fresh ground black pepper. What do you think?
Ooh, very, very good. It's the cheese steps right out there. I've never had pepper on my popcorn.
See?
But I'll tell you, it tastes very, very good.
Well, good. And I like that you picked up that there was some cheese. There's a little rosemary on there as well.
Oh, really?
So I'm going to cut into this. It's going to run all over the place probably. Oh, look at that.
Oh, that looks good.
Peppers and onions. Stick that up there like so. And this is our broccoli and cheese one. Careful.
All right.
Stuffed with broccoli and cheese. So that's what we had. Why don't you give the hot chocolate a whirl, and I'm going to try one of these pretzels. So good.
Oh, nice.
So good.
Thick chocolate taste. It's very good. Very good.
All right, that's what we like to hear. All right, so which one do you want to try?
Let's try the steak and peppers there.
All right. So now I don't know if I said this, but this one actually has a pretzel crust on the outside.
Okay.
And I'll be curious to see if you think it tastes like a pretzel when you take a bite. So get right in there. I'm going to get in there as well. It's hot. What do you think?
Delicious.
All right.
Now, that's
Wicked good.